What's up, everyone? It's Danny Dhaiphong here. I wanted to come on and just talk about briefly what just transpired in Lebanon, the political assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, the longtime Hezbollah leader who is a resistance hero all across the region, all across West Asia and the world. Israel conducted a massive airstrike on southern Lebanon on September 27th, dropping 2,000 tons of bombs and explosives via U.S. F-35s, U.S.-supplied F-35s, and Hassan Nasrallah was assassinated. Now, there was a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation being spread. He was and he wasn't. But the fact is that now Hezbollah has acknowledged this, and I wanted to talk about the implications of this. Just wanted to show you, here is my dog. He is in attendance for this video to lighten the mood a bit, but I want to talk about the dark and the deep implications of this, the shocking implications of this, because what Israel just did was an egregious, just absolute insult and disrespect to international law. And of course, this is nothing new. Israel and the United States, as its primary backer, has been absolutely disrespecting international law since the very beginning of now this nearly 12-month military campaign that many have called a genocide in Gaza alone. But of course, this is extended to Lebanon in recent weeks to a huge degree, with the murder of over 1,000, nearly, I think, over 1,300 Lebanese people, many of them civilians, many of them children, in an attempt to achieve objectives that I don't believe Israel is actually going to achieve, returning the so-called settlers to the north, as well as destroying Hezbollah. And I'm going to talk about why I don't believe Hezbollah has been destroyed or will be destroyed by even this major blow. It is a major blow, but even this major blow will not destroy Hezbollah, and I'm going to explain why. But I want to talk about first how this occurred, not just the number of bombs, not just the U.S. supplied weapons that did it, but when it happened. Benjamin Netanyahu delayed his talks to the UN, his speech to the UN General Assembly. He delayed it. It was supposed to happen Wednesday, then it happened Friday the 27th when Nasrallah was killed. Now, media reports, Western media reports, Israeli media are saying that actually the reason why this occurred is because Israel was using the UN General Assembly as a diversion to make Hezbollah believe that there was no reason to be worried about any kind of Israeli strikes or major Israeli moves during this time. And Iran and many others now suspect that the U.S. and Benjamin Netanyahu were conspiring during the UN General Assembly to make this attack happen. So what does this mean? It means that the UN General Assembly was being used as essentially a military satellite base for war crimes, for literal war crimes, because we know that many civilians were killed in these attacks. So this is a major disrespect to the to the international system, to international law itself, but there's no surprise there. But the implications of this are going to be huge. There's going to be just a long war that mainstream media publications like the Foreign Affairs magazine have all been talking about. They've been talking about how Israel is trapped in a long war. As we speak, it is trapped in this multi-front war, a 7-front war, which includes Gaza, West Bank, it includes Ansarallah in Yemen, it includes Iran, it includes Hezbollah, and it includes the many resistance factions in Syria and Iraq, and that this 7-front war actually has 8 fronts because Israel's internal political situation is deteriorating as we speak. But nonetheless, this assassination of Hassan Nasrallah is a major blow to Hezbollah. We have to acknowledge that at the moment. But even today, even as I'm recording this video, Hezbollah continues its attacks into so-called Israeli territory. It continues to ensure that there is no respite for Israel and its attempts to so-called return the settlers to the north and essentially destroy Lebanon. And due to Lebanon, they're very open about this. Israel is very open about them wanting to do to Lebanon what they've done to Gaza. But it's my estimation that this is actually not going to occur. That what we are actually witnessing is the death throes of the Israeli regime. And let me tell you why. Because no matter how beat back the resistance becomes, the resistance is going to exist. And not only is it going to exist, but the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah is likely going to expand the resistance. It's going to create many Hassan Nasrallahs. It's going to multiply the number of Hassan Nasrallahs that exist in the region. It's going to create an even more steadfast opposition in the region to what Israel is doing, and of course what the United States is doing. This was always a suicidal venture for both the United States and Israel, because the goals, right? The goals of a greater Israel that the regime has, the goals of creating wars to ensure that Netanyahu and his faction of the Israeli elite are secure, their political power is secure, was always a short-term venture. In the long term, what we are going to see is a continued deterioration of not just Israel's legitimacy, but Israel's influence, and then that will lead to Israel's eventual collapse. That is what we are seeing. The death of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, yes, in the short term, just like the pager attacks, just like these strikes on Lebanon, just like the death and the murder of so many commanders, that is going to have an immediate impact on Hezbollah and its ability to escalate operations. That is no doubt true, but it is not going to eliminate the resistance of Hezbollah. Actually, what it's going to do is it's going to cause Hezbollah to regroup and the entire resistance to regroup and to mount an even fiercer campaign of attack. But there's some difficult decisions that have to be made on the axis of resistance side. Firstly, we know that Iran has been talking for months about a response to Israel for its many transgressions against it, and especially the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the top Hamas negotiator. We know that there is still the Iranian response that has not come yet, but has caused Israel to, I believe, step up its mounting campaign, not just against Hezbollah, but to ensure that it is prepared for this potential attack from Iran. So it has been running scared in many respects. But Israel's not new to this. This is nothing new for Israel. Regional war is something that Israel has been planning as well for many, many, many years. And so Israel has stepped up its attacks on Hezbollah and has been able to mount some short-term successes against the resistance. But short-term successes against the resistance are really a blip on the overall radar and overall trajectory of this particular conflict. Because ever since October 7th, ever since Israel supposedly did not conduct the correct intelligence, did not expect what the Palestinian resistance did in Gaza, ever since that time, Israel has been engaged in a campaign that would lock itself into essentially the war to end all wars for Israel. Because before October 7th, Israel was relatively in a pretty good position. The Palestinian resistance had been, at that time, finding itself with the least support globally, at least support in the sense that would change the calculus. Of course, there are countries like Russia, Iran, China that all support Palestinian statehood. But other than Iran and Syria, there weren't many states actively supporting the Palestinian resistance in any kind of way, even in the realm of political support, even in the realm of making Palestine a big issue. After October 7th, we've seen a groundswell. We've seen an explosion of support for Palestine. We've seen also the fact that the axis of resistance has actually gotten stronger over this period. Even with these setbacks, we cannot say the axis of resistance is weaker than it was before October 7th. Indeed, we see Ansarallah, we see the Palestinian resistance groups in Gaza and in the West Bank. We see the resistance groups in Syria and Iraq. We see Hezbollah and we see Iran all more united than perhaps they've ever been prior. This is what the genocide has wrought. And so Israel right now is gambling that decapitating the head of the Hezbollah organization, decapitating its leader, decapitating a hero of the resistance, will create an existential crisis, an internal political crisis within the resistance as a whole. And this, in my opinion, is a miscalculation. Because if Israel indeed could defeat Hezbollah, if Israel indeed could defeat Iran, if Israel indeed could achieve its objectives, it would have already begun pursuing them. But no, it is locked into a years-long war, which will be heavily dependent upon the ability of the United States to support Israel at this level for as long as it can. It will depend on the world situation, increasing whether favorability or a lack of favorability toward Israel. And it will also depend on the ability of the resistance to be patient around this ongoing conflict. Because one of the reasons why the resistance has not taken a bigger step toward responding to Israel, one of the reasons why it hasn't shown its full capabilities, whether we're talking about Hezbollah, Iran, or really the entire axis in terms of coordinating a response and a retaliation to Israel, is because they don't want to see the bloodbath that's to come. That is the big problem here that the axis of resistance is really facing, is that Israel is willing, we've seen it in Gaza, Israel is more than willing to initiate a bloodbath in order to increase its standing, in order to ensure that its legitimacy is, even if it decreases. Sorry, I'm going to get my dog up here. I don't want him to lie on this dirt road. Even if the Israelis, the Israeli war machine, is more than willing to enact all of this violence, the axis of resistance actually is not. It does not want to see the Palestinian people be sacrificed at the altar of Israel's unhinged and the U.S.'s unhinged military policy. And you might ask, Danny, but Israel's already doing it. The United States is already doing it. They've already killed more than 40,000 Palestinians, at least in terms of the bombings and the military campaign that the U.S. and Israel has waged. But we know that it's been many more. We know that there's probably been 180 plus thousand Palestinians that have died by many other causes, not necessarily related to bombing, but or directly related to bombing, but in terms of the consequences of what this genocidal military campaign has wrought. And I would say, yes, you are right. But if we think about the actual strategic calculus in the region, what would happen if Iran, if Hezbollah indeed showed their full capabilities against Israel? It would mean that not only would Palestinians be sacrificed in massive, even more massive numbers. I mean, who knows if a Palestine would even exist after that? But Israel has the nuclear card. They do have the nuclear card, and I've covered this with Professor Saeed Mohammed Marandi on my program in our live show. I've covered the fact that Israel and Israeli media is talking about the nuclear Samson option. It's talking about how it can show off its nuclear capabilities to an even greater degree, how it can be more open about its nuclear capabilities to deter Iran, because it is more than well known. This is why Hassan Nasrallah was sacrificed. It's why Hassan Nasrallah was the target of assassination. It's why Israel has been going after Hezbollah leaders and Lebanese citizens, mind you. It's because it's to create fear, panic, anguish, and heartbreak. It's to demoralize the resistance, because Israel knows if the resistance is in a position where it has to fight Israel at full throttle, Israel will lose. Israel knows it will lose. Israel knows it cannot fight Lebanon. It cannot fight Hezbollah. It cannot fight Iran. It cannot fight the resistance as a whole, in totality, in any kind of military situation. It will either have to, one, spark a nuclear conflict, or it will have to, and in prelude to this, spark a massive regional war that would destroy Israel itself too. So that is the ultimate strategic calculus that the axis of resistance is weighing here. It knows it cannot trust Israel to hold back, right? It cannot trust Israel to fight a conflict fairly or to engage in the laws of war, or to, ensure that things don't spiral out of control. The axis of resistance has been the one that's had to manage escalation from the very beginning, and they are still doing that. I don't expect there to be massive, I expect there to be retaliation for Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah's murder, but I do not expect there to be a massive attack that will lead this into a regional conflict from the axis of resistance side. Indeed, we have Israel already doing this. So now the difficult decision is here for the axis of resistance. Are they going to be able to allow Israel to continue on this trajectory of mass death and destruction, of mass destabilization? The U.S., of course, sees this as a potential boon for them in terms of maintaining short-term strategic and geopolitical, economic, and military dominance in the region. In my opinion, that is a miscalculation, because actually the further and further Israel goes down this regional war rabbit hole, the more likely it is that U.S. power declines, as it already is in the region. That is the reality. This is kind of the unmistakable contradictions that we are seeing here, okay? And so, here's my dog again. There he is. And I just want to talk to you about what's been going on in the region, give you a brief update about what I believe is happening here. I believe that this, this war, this genocide, this campaign that Israel is waging here in West Asia, what it has done to Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, what it is attempting to do to stop Hezbollah, its ability and its attempt to weaken the resistance, I believe are all going to end in failure, because overall the resistance has to exist, and the resistance has to continue to escalate its war of attrition, its guerrilla war of attrition. While we do have some states involved, Syria and Iran, especially Iran, we know that this is really a war of resistance, an anti-colonial war of resistance that is unprecedented in its history, because we are living in a much different era in the world. And so the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah is indeed a tragedy. It is indeed a big issue for the axis of resistance. It's a major blow. But what it isn't is a defeat, right? They have not lost. They have not lost the war. In fact, Israel, the further it goes down this rabbit hole of assassinations and of the attempted destruction of the resistance, the more resistance it is going to create, and the more that its grave is going to be dug. So that's all I have to say today. I'll be back live very soon in order to cover all of these ongoing developments. We have some very special guests coming up soon, including Professor Jeffrey Sachs on September 30th, and more to come to announce. So with all that said, everyone, be sure to subscribe on Patreon at patreon.com/DannyHaiphong. Subscribe to my Rumble account too. I'll put both of those links in the comments as a pinned comment, because censorship is really heating up on YouTube. And so I really would appreciate your support in any way that you can, in order to ensure that should I no longer be able to be on YouTube, that I am able to continue this work. Thank you very much, everyone. Say goodbye to my dog. All right, there he is. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyHaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.